Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm doing a draw it again or paint it again, I don't know which one to call it, image that I originally did, so the one on the left. I originally did it in 2008, and that was when I was, I guess, 24. And the reason I'm doing this is I had one of my patrons, Eric Brothers, commission me to do one of these with an old image I made called A Girl and Her Doll. And it was a pretty interesting experience. So I figured, well, I hadn't recorded that one as a video. So I thought, okay, let me try on another image done around the same time and see if I, can do it again and do it better and maybe give you some tips on what I'm doing. So the first thing is the things, that I know now that I didn't before. The first thing is the composition, I think. Before I really wasn't thinking in terms of creating an image on the page and thinking about negative and positive space. So here I have the head sort of pushed up. I made the hair a bigger shape. And what I'm trying to do is make a more interesting background shape, actually. So you see how it kind of breaks into two sections, and then there's having the character's head close to the top seems to be good compositionally as well. It makes things look pretty dynamic, I feel. And then having this big S shape with the hair. So that type of swooping big shape sort of can help to lead the eye all the way up the image. So for instance, if you start looking at the bottom of the image, your eye is going to be led upwards. And now what I'm doing is I'm smudging. So the technique I guess I've developed, but I'm sure not the only one. But the thing I use now is I'll do like a rough sketch. And often I do this traditionally in my sketchbook with pen. And then I bring it in digitally. I do the sketch, and in this case I did a digital sketch. Then I throw over some gray to tone it down. And then I throw another layer of gray to tone down the lines. So the first one sort of is set on multiply. And that just darkens the whole thing. And then the next one takes down the lines. And then what I do is this stage where I put in occlusion shadows. I work on my darks. And in the original, there really wasn't any of that. Maybe in the hair, you can say there's some occlusion shadows, but not much. And those are really important for giving like a three-dimensional feel. And there was also not really a sense of form or anatomy. I was doing it from imagination. And this one I'm still doing from imagination, but I have a much better grasp of anatomy now and form. And without that, it's very hard to understand where things should go. You sort of place them based on I think things go here. I think this is how a body works, but it's not really that way. And I'm not saying I'm, perfect with my anatomy right now, because I'm still really not, but it is further along than before. And that would be the biggest lesson I keep trying to tell people. It's all about drawing, because I don't paint much nowadays. Really, really little. I mostly, I'm doing teaching, and that's most of my time is into teaching, and I don't really do images or, too much freelance work. And so the painting skills should be going way down, but because my drawing skills, I still draw all the time, are going up, the painting kind of catches up. It's not that big of a deal. So painting is really important. And then what I've done in the meantime, I added a background. The other one had a white background, which isn't terrible, But if I use white backgrounds, what I tend to do is do a very high key image. For instance, a lot of pastels, the lines won't go to black. So maybe my lines would be in value around a mid-gray. And now what I'm doing is just trying to add some detail, I guess. I'm not saying it's good because it's not. I really didn't like the design that I originally did. And I didn't know whether I should completely change it or try and keep it roughly the same. And I thought, okay, I'll try and keep the design roughly the same, so I can focus more on, okay, what has improved in terms of my technical skills. But it still felt like there needs to be more stuff going on. And this is something I had a lot of trouble with. You can see in the image on the left, the original one, I added like these cut lines in the gloves. That's really just me trying to add some detail. Probably the same was true with the thing on her head. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It wasn't a well thought out design. It was more like, well, I want to draw a girl, I guess, an elf girl. What do I do? And at this point, I was never really looking at references of like, well, what does an elf look like? Or, I mean, you know, a generic elf or something like that, and then working with it. So I just, let's throw a skull on the head. And so in this one, I had to pay much more attention to how this skull would be in perspective. And the original one, just, it's sort of sitting there, and you can see her forehead sort of flows right into the skull. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't feel like this is sitting on top of her head. And then the things on the collar and the crotch area, those black areas, I think that was just understanding like, well, I need something to unify it. And I'd heard of, and here what I'm doing, I'm just coloring the image, but I'd heard of using common elements throughout a design to create, what's the word? When you repeat design throughout an image. I forget. But anyway, it's like consistency throughout the design. And so that was that attempt, but it really doesn't feel like it carries over properly. So I wouldn't do that, because you look at the skull and it looks like, okay, so there's this skull thing that maybe she's hunted or something, but then you look at this necklace and it looks very modern. So it kind of clashes. It's like, what world do you belong to? Are you a very futuristic world or kind of not? Yeah, I'm not sure. So coloring is very easy. I'm not saying I did a great job on it, but once you lay down the values, and this is what I try and do these days. I'm working off pretty much black and white in the beginning, get down all the values or most of the values, smudge things out to smooth areas, and then harden them again with a brush, you know, and then use a brush to add detail where it's been lost or additional things. So it's a combination between painting and brushwork. I mean, brushwork and smudge things in painting for me. But then once I've got the values down, I throw in a gradient map, and then it really just helps me to put down a tone, and then I can just color on top of that with a color layer at first, and then work over it. The thing is, a key in this is that it's very important to nail values. If you don't have your values right, it's quite tricky. And in the original one, I didn't even know about values really that much. It was more just, I used whatever I had. So I was mostly coloring the image. I wasn't thinking in terms of painting an image and, you know, what that means so much. I mean, I did paintings, but I didn't know how to really carry it over into digital work. So I don't know. I'm not sure how much I like the redone version. I like the face. I think the expression is kind of cool. But as for the rest, it's like, yeah. I imagine, what was this, 9 years ago? So I imagine in 9 years I'll probably be able to do a bit better. But this is really one of the things that I think is important to recognize with whatever journey you're on. If you're an artist and you're still struggling, it's kind of those things where you have 9 or 10 years before you can see a huge improvement sometimes. Some people have that a lot sooner, but you know, it's not like you should expect, well, I've been drawing for 2 years and I still suck, because 2 years might not be long enough. I really hate that chain thing, that metal thing, because I should have used an ellipse tool and made that proper, and proper round thing, because it really does stand out to me. But I was just painting and whatever, not really thinking about things. So once I put in the big forms of the hair, I can put in smaller forms, and that's basically all that's happening now. It's just detail work, putting in smaller and smaller details, because the big thing works, and it's no longer really a drawing where you see the lines. And because of that, I don't have to worry about, if I draw hair, I can just draw light strands and dark strands, and it gives this illusion of, oh, there's hair here. Here, just throwing on some overlay, color gradients and stuff. A lot of pretty much this part of the image is just tricks that I've learned, using color balance and things to make sure the colors are working, and using soft light and color dodge and overlays and adding noise filters. And here I'm blurring areas and sharpening areas. So it's just, I guess this is the stuff that it's not cool in a sense of, well, I guess it makes the image look cool, but it's like anyone can do it. It's just dumb stuff that, okay, you learned how to put a noise layer, for instance, like that, so that the image has some texture to it. And then just some final cleanup. It's, correcting some of the shapes. I wanted the ears to feel more like light is passing through. And yeah, here I'm just fiddling with the hair, making sure it looks good, or it looks better. So anyway, hopefully the contrast is worth this video's existence. It's meant to be sort of encouraging, I guess, and I don't know, I guess informative as well. I'm not sure how informative, but yeah, it's mostly just meant to be encouraging and letting you know, like, you can keep getting better, and maybe you can pick up some tips of things that maybe you were doing that you could adopt differently from this process or something. So yeah, I want to go ahead and thank Eric again for the commission, and I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.